ride with me to the other clans and we will defeat the sky people.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, temporary laryngitis. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that lift them above the average genre fare, or at least separate them sometimes, maybe not lift. I am here today with my good friend and podcast co-host, Mr. David Horton. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing well. We usually start by talking about our genre week. My genre week has been semi non-existent just because I've been horribly busy with other stuff. But I did start. The past, I think 3 episodes, I've started something. I'm still not finished with it, but I've started it. But I started the Peripheral, which is the new one from Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan.
That's the Westworld people, right?
Correct. Same couple that did Westworld. And this one's basically about a virtual reality unit that ends up maybe being a time travel unit instead of virtual reality. So instead of you playing a game, you're actually in the future doing something. It's very convoluted. It's very crazy. It's very heady. It's very Westworldy. So I'm kind of loving the first 2 episodes, but that's all I'm into it. It stars Grace Moretz, who's really good. Yeah. Who's really good in it. She's doing like it's an attempt at a Southern accent. It's pretty good. But she plays, and it's set in a nondescript, just a few, maybe a decade in the future. You don't really know. It's kind of like, looks very similar to where we are now, but everything is a little bit higher tech. So again, that Westworld aesthetic, where it could be our world today, but they have like drone cars and they have stuff like that. So it's very interesting. But good science fiction, really strong science fiction and cool stuff. And I'm hoping that they can hold it through to the end of the season. And I can actually say, wow, here's another good series to watch, but don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. Okay. That's what I've been doing. What about you? Don't tell me you watched something scary.
I did. I watched something in the down the corridors of the Shudder platform. I landed on a little movie called 1BR.
Okay.
This one has caught my attention. It's got a little bit of, I don't know, for some reason when it says 1BR like that, I remember that old movie Single White Female, which is like an abbreviation in an ad for a roommate, except this one's, an abbreviation for an apartment in a building. It also got high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it got like an 86. So I thought, well, you know what, I'll check this out. And I was not disappointed. It's directed by a guy named David Marmor. He has not done a lot. As a matter of fact, not anybody in this movie, the cast really either, except for one man that I recognize, has done a lot. It's mostly television actors. And then I noticed, well, it's filmed in LA. So, and it's very, very low budget. So it's like, I'm sure a little project, some actors just got together and did, and it is quite enjoyable. It's got, without giving too much away, it's about a girl that's looking, for a new apartment. She's moving out from her father, who's a little overbearing, and trying to start her own life. She has a cat. I do remember that the apartment building does not like pets, and she doesn't tell them that she has a cat. However, there's a very Rosemary's Baby vibe to this story.
Okay.
Nothing to do with Satan, nothing to do with the pregnancy, but it has to do with the collective of people that live in this apartment building. And I will
Okay.
just leave it at that. But I do
The
recommend
collective.
it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. A great little hour and a half spent. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, I will add it to my ever increasing list, but I doubt I'll get to it with any time soon, sort of thing. But yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you said collective. That really got me.
Well, I mean, it's kind of what it turns out to be. You know, she is the outsider, but she gets this fantastic apartment in this great community. What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Yes, of course. Okay. Do we want
I
to?
know there's no segue. I just
There's
realized
no
that.
segue from that.
No, it's modern day. It's not set in the 80s. It's not sci-fi. It's not in space. It's not little kids.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, can't do it. So can't do it. Just we'll just jump in. You guys are probably, if you're new to us, this is what we do: is we talk about films and television and horror and science fiction. And if you are joining us again, then you know this is what it is. And if either of you are doing that, either group, you probably clicked on it because it said Explorers, which is what we're doing. We're doing a little film from 1985. It is directed by Joe Dante, who was having a good time in the early 80s. It's written by Eric Luke. It is starring Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix, two actors that ended up getting much bigger parts after this, and also that other kid. No, Bobby Fite is the third part of the triumvirate. And it, as a synopsis, the one in IMDb is okay, but not great. But basically, we're following three different kids. One's kind of a lone kid who has, trouble at home. The dad is a junkyard salesman who obviously there's some possible physical abuse or not comfortable home life for that kid. The other kid, Wolfgang, is played by River Phoenix, and he is the boy genius, even down to has to wear a tie to school, even though he looks like he's in probably, ninth grade. But very intelligent, a huge family of Germans who are also evidently in science in some respect, that sort of thing. And then Ethan Hawke's character, who is essentially our lead, is the young kid, typical 80s, rides his bike, that sort of young lad.
It's a very Spielberg-esque setting.
Yes, very much so, which is what Joe Dante was wanting to do, I think. And we'll get to that once we get to keys and other stuff. But the three of them one of them is specifically the Ethan Hawke character is having dreams. And in these dreams, he sees these strange diagrams and he starts writing them down. Well, his friend, River Phoenix, who is, it's Ben and Wolfgang. So Wolfgang realizes that these are circuit boards. And since he's a boy genius, he starts putting the circuit boards together, and that allows them to create essentially a dynamic bubble, which is a large bubble that they can change shape on, they can move around, everything else, and it's inertia free. So it becomes a transportation device. And because of it, they end up following a signal and going and meeting aliens. And that's the basic premise. Had you seen this movie before?
I have.
Okay. Did you see it in the 80s?
I saw it in the 80s in a theater, probably with you, but I don't remember who I was with.
Oh, maybe. I remember seeing it in a theater.
Actually, I want to say I may have been with David Farmer because I don't think either one of us liked it very much.
Okay. Did you like it better this time?
Not really. I mean, it's okay. There was a string of movies in the 80s that came out. This one, and namely Goonies. Was Goonies produced by Spielberg?
Oh, yeah.
Because I was shocked that this was not produced by Spielberg. These movies are very, very similar to me in the whole kids' fantasy element. And I don't know. I was probably a kid then trying to be more adult, and now I'm an adult and I totally can't relate.
I do like the kid aspects of it. I really do like the child. Well, and I empathize with him. I mean, it starts with the War of the Worlds is on his television as he's going to bed at night, and he's obviously obsessed with 50s science fiction, which is so I could totally relate to that. And he's the constant optimist in it. He's always going, "There's something out there. I want to go there. I want to be well, this can be something really big." And I love that childlike wonder. That's a very Spielberg element to this whole movie. I mean, we're talking keys. Definitely Spielberg is a huge key to this movie.
I was shocked that he didn't do it, and I was shocked that John Williams didn't do the music. It was Jerry Goldsmith.
Jerry Goldsmith
sounds like a John Williams soundtrack to me.
Yep. Well, a lot of Spielberg came from Universal because that was his contractual obligation. This is from Paramount. So this is their version of that. This is their kind of trying to get on the quote Spielberg wagon sort of thing.
Okay. So that explains that.
Yeah.
Another element that bothers me that I'm sure you'll get to, and I love Joe Dante. He's like somebody's dad. Every time I see him, like when he was one of the presentators on the last Chainsaw Awards at Fangoria, or when I see him just talking in a documentary about horror movies, he's just a really nice guy. He's kind of like George Romero, and I want to like him. But all of his movies, this Twilight Zone, even The Howling to a certain aspect, his creatures go off into cartoon land. And you and I have talked about this in the past, where I think he was an animator or he loves animation or something.
Yeah, he was a
very
animator.
Cartoon thing about him that kind of pulls you out of the movie sometimes.
Well, and in this one, it's even more so with his characterizations. This is very similar to his other movie from the year prior, which is Gremlins.
Yes.
And the way the budding romance between the little boy and the little girl, and all of that kind of stuff. It's very cartoony. It's very one note, and it's a two-dimensional kind of thing. And this is similar to that. Very, very similar to that. It also shares producers with Gremlins. There's another series of movies, like you said, it's those 80s, but also in the 90s. Do you remember a much better movie, in my opinion, of kids movie by Joe Dante? And one of my favorites he's ever done was one called Small Soldiers. Do you remember that one?
Seen it.
Oh, you should watch that one. That one actually works and the characters work in it, but it's a late 90s Joe Dante who's had a little bit more maturity to him. Okay. So his characters are more realistic. Things work better. It's a little bit darker teen story, so to speak, or kids story. But one thing I thought you would find interesting, not just Dante-esque, but the producers of this, the two big producers of this are David Bombick and Edward Feldman. And in my notes, doing research on it, they went on to do a little movie that you actually like, both of them together, called The Hitcher.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I do like that movie.
But they did The Hitcher, the one that we were talking, I mean, even back then in the 80s, I remember us talking about that probably has the biggest body count of any movie we've ever seen. It was like 56 people were killed.
Well, and it was Rutger Hauer in his prime too. I mean, he was just awesome in that movie. It was after Blade Runner, and he was a face to be seen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of comparison to the Spielberg universe in this. You've got, the kids on their bikes in suburbia, that sort of thing. You've got the bullies who are, the classic bullies, the blonde,
the nerd,
heroine girl,
the outcast, the nerd. Yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith doing music as opposed to John Williams doing music. You've got some parents that are there, but they're still disconnected parents, more interested in themselves and what they're doing than they are in the kids. Even the mom saying, "You shouldn't do experiments so late at night," sort of thing. Or non-existent parents, which is what you kind of get from the third kid from Steve. And that was kind of weird, wasn't it? As a matter of fact, I read one review of this movie, and the guy goes, "This has some really, nice performances by young actors in their first or second movies. You've got Ethan Hawke, who is still a great actor now. You've got River Phoenix, who did some incredible stuff and then passed away. And then you've got, that other kid.
Jason Pressman is his name. You said Bobby Fight, but I don't think it's Bobby Fight. Jason Pressman played the one that was the son of the junkyard guy or whatever.
Yeah,
Darren was his name.
Yeah,
Darren
that's his name.
Woods. I don't remember. Bobby Fight wasn't in this very much, was he?
No, that was another. That was in my notes. That was incorrect.
Yeah, I think he was one of the bullies or something, or just one of the other kids at school.
Yeah,
Jason Pressman. I mean, I recognized Jason Pressman when I saw him. I was like, "What do I know him from?" And I'm just doing a quick search. He was in The Lady in White, The Stone Boy, Gremlins 2, which is another Dante movie. So I mean, not a lot, but I like him. I thought he was fine.
I liked him, but I could not replace the cipher that he reminds me of. I mean, he seems to be somebody, and I cannot remember the one that he reminded me of. But the other actor has gone on to do quite a deal, and he really didn't. He did some stuff up until I think the late 90s, and then didn't. Yeah, and most of that was television work, sort of thing.
Right.
Which is interesting because I really think he had more depth than the other two. In researching it, I found out that River Phoenix did not like this part at all. He actually wanted to play the other part.
He auditioned for Darren, yes,
and ended up being given the nerd, which he didn't want to do. And you can kind of tell he's not as good at this as any other thing I've seen River Phoenix in. And Ethan Hawke's character is written way too, I want to say happy, but way too optimistic, in my opinion, all the way through it.
Well, especially when you look at his later roles.
Well, yeah. He's definitely not the same as he was then.
But honestly, I mean, obviously I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but for what it is, I think they're all fine in those parts. They don't bother me in those parts.
No, it wasn't that they bothered me. I just have seen, you see much better potential, especially in River, in almost everything else he does.
When I think of River Phoenix, I think of Stand By Me.
Which is the year after this, and that's his breakout, really. It really is his breakout role.
And then what else do I think of? Probably in my Own Private Idaho would probably be the other one I think of.
Yeah.
I just it's so funny, he didn't live as long, but was on the same track that who's the guy that did the Joker that died? Heath Ledger. I kind of equate him and Heath Ledger a lot, even though Heath Ledger was older, I think, when he died. I think they were both extremely talented actors that could have gone on and just done so much more.
Agreed.
Their lives not been cut short. But
agreed. And, it was, I think, how they always say Robin Williams' career took a trajectory change after John Belushi. I think Robert Downey Jr.'s took a trajectory after River Phoenix, because both of them were in that same ilk and that same era of, when all of that. And Johnny Depp's the same way. I think he kind of changed a little bit after River. River Phoenix's death had a big influence on a lot of people.
All right, you said River affected Johnny Depp and Downey Jr. Who did you say Williams affected? Oh, you're saying Belushi affected. Okay, gotcha.
Robin Williams. Yeah.
I see that. I can see that.
So that kind of, when you see such great talent taken so quickly and so short, in such a short time, I think it affects the contemporaries of the time.
That makes sense. And it also parts open up too.
Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, it's interesting you said what you said about Dante, because my first note on my watch note is Dante always has a cartoon mentality in his characters, in his structure, in his alien design. Everything has
his background. I mean, they're playing on televisions in the backgrounds of his stuff all the time.
Yep. He's got all of this very cartoon sort of feel.
I mean, the
everything.
school is named after the guy that what's the school's name? I've got it in my trivia.
That I don't have in mind.
Jones. What's the Jones guy that did the Warner Brothers cartoon? Steve
Chuck.
Jones. No, Chuck Jones. It's Chuck Jones High School.
Oh, well, then that makes sense.
Yeah. So they go, or Chuck Jones Middle School, wherever those kids go to school, it's named after an animator.
Yeah. Well, this is the guy that started with Piranha, so.
You know what? He did do Piranha, and I talked about that a couple of seasons ago in a in a genre week thing. I forgot about that.
And he's hit and miss.
I like Piranha.
Yeah. He's hit and
like
miss. I like the Burbs, that he did.
I love the Burbs. I do remember that movie because I thought, but that's a comedy, and that's Tom Hanks, and it's meant to be outlandish.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. But he did, he did the segment "It's a Good Life" in.
That's
Twilight
what I'm
Zone
talking about. Very cartoonish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I can't fault the movie, the actors in it really, and plus the fact that the screenplay guy to this, I mean, he's got like 4 screenplay credits. That's it. So obviously, and because that's my big misgiving about the movie is we kind of understand the motivation of Ben because he's so obsessed with science fiction. And even later on in the climax and everything, he even says, so you've brought us here to teach us something, right? To tell us the mysteries of the universe, all that kind of stuff. And really, no, they didn't, sort of thing. So you kind of understand his motivation. The other two, not really. Other than, Darren kind of wants to do something, how fast will it go? Darren's kind of the adventurer type who just wants to do something. And Wolfgang is just along because of the science. But nothing really happens. I mean, really, if you think about it from a story-wise, they find it, they build it, they go there, they come back. That's it. There's no
there's
change of character.
Twist is that what they think are adults end up being kids like themselves.
Okay, so it's Trelane. That's my big key. This is Squire of Gothos. Sort
very
of
much
thing.
So. It's not something we haven't seen before.
No, not at all. And just there's no motivation for stuff in this. There's no motivation, for the parents to let their kids sneak out every single freaking night either. So
they're little kids too. Did you, I guess we didn't really talk about scenes. Are there any scenes that stick out to you in this movie?
The two that I always remembered and came back when I watched them were the second scene with the ball in the basement, when he finally can figure out how to move it and he thinks he's got everything all together, and suddenly it just goes freaking crazy, and like the cat's going and it's going through books,
through all the books.
It just destroys the basement. I always remembered that and thought that was really cool. And the although I didn't really memorable scene, although I didn't really like it, the big scene in the lounge area of the spaceship when he's doing all the lines from all the old 50s and 40s serials, and they're doing, she's just their design and the craziness of that scene.
I may have put it in my keys. I can't remember. No, I didn't. But there is a movie that we have talked about before that it was aliens basing what they know of us on our television stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's not Contact, is it? No. But it's
although Contact does begin with that whole early audio sort of burst of all of that stuff going out into the cosmos.
But there's something, I know I have seen a movie where aliens expect us to be one way because of what they've seen on television.
Yes. Well, that's a big sci-fi trope. That's been out there
Okay.
in short stories as well,
Okay.
of people coming and landing and expecting us to, and because of the vast differences, they're just getting like the honeymooners. So they think that's what life on Earth is like.
Yeah, to the moon, Alice, to the moon.
Right. That
Right.
sort of thing. But yes, you are right. There is another major film that actually does that, and I cannot remember what it is, but that would be a huge
I was
key that
trying
we
my
should
damnedest.
reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scenes, I mean, that scene behind me is from the very end where he's flying and the girl ends up flying with him. That scene stuck out to me because I thought it looked kind of cool. Very Christopher Reeve and Superman. I like the scene.
You know what the key? You know what key it's based on?
Peter Pan.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I like the scene you were talking about where the basement got wrecked, but mainly I like that scene because I was wondering what James Cromwell was going to do because I really like James Cromwell playing his dad. I thought he was great.
He was great.
The adult cast in this movie is really good too. It's got some standards. We could go to casting if you want.
Let's do. Let's talk about them.
I don't have a whole lot. Like I don't have alternates or anything. And I did want to point out before I moved on to casting that I thought this movie was like a big summer hit, but this movie tanked.
Oh, it was terrible. Yeah, it bombed.
I read that the budget was 25 million and it only grossed 9 in like the world. So this movie did not do good, which is probably why Joe Dante has always been up and down in Hollywood as well. As far as the cast, like David said, Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix, basically it's their feature film debuts as kids. And I think Ethan Hawke is strong in it. I mean, he's strong in everything I've ever seen him in, and it started here. It may not have been a great script, but he's still convincing in what he's reading.
Yeah, very passionate about it and very good.
Yeah. River Phoenix may not have wanted to do it, but I thought he looked very funny in those glasses, and I thought he was very convincing as a second generation German nerd.
Yes.
And I love that, his name was Wolfgang.
Of course.
But like you said, he did originally audition for the role of Darren, which would have been the tough kid, which is what he ended up playing in Stand By Me, the following film. And he did that really well in that movie.
Tough kid with a heart kind of thing.
And coming from a family and a broken home and a bad family. Yeah, it's great. Great. Moving on down past all these people I don't know or care about. James Cromwell played Wolfgang's father. He's so young in this movie. I'm so used to seeing him as an older man in movies. From Babe going up, through 6 feet. Wasn't he in 6 feet under? No, that was someone else.
Yep.
Oh, no. I can't remember.
I don't think so.
I think I'm equating him with the guy that played the father in 6 feet under. It's a different guy. Anyway, Brooke Bundy played the science teacher. Robert Picardo is in this. Now, he is another actor I know more from television than I know from feature films. And he plays 1, 2, 3 characters in this movie. He plays Star Killer in the movie at the drive-in.
Yep.
He plays Whack, the alien that thinks everything's based on television from America. From the Earth. And then he plays Whack and Neek's father, who, once we discover that the aliens are actually children. But then we have Dick Miller, who is Joe Dante's standby.
Always.
In everything.
Always. Yep.
Yeah. But what's so cool is his little partner in crime in this movie is Meshach Taylor, which I totally did not remember at all.
I didn't either.
He is no longer with us, but he played what's his face, Anthony, on Designing Women, and I loved that show, so I knew him as well. So it was great seeing Dick Miller. Like I said, some of the adults in this movie are great: James Cromwell, Robert Picardo, Meshach Taylor, and Dick Miller not excluded. So
Well, the one that got me was Ben's mom. And I was going, who is that? I've got to find. And I finally found out it was Mary Kay Place. Plays his
Yes.
mom.
Oh, I don't have her listed for some.
She is
Odd reason.
uncredited in it. She agreed to do
Why?
it uncredited. I don't know, but she is uncredited in the movie.
Yeah, I forgot she is in this movie. That's another great adult in this movie because I will watch
Yeah.
Mary Kay Place in anything. She is fantastic.
She was fantastic.
Especially The Big Chill.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, that is so funny that she was not in my cast notes because she's not credited. Bizarre.
Yep.
Maybe she.
Well, and production wise in this too, Goonies had been a big hit. Gremlins had been a big hit, and Paramount really wanted a big hit. And they actually took this movie away from Joe Dante.
They did.
And he is credited as saying it was unfinished. And another reason why he credits it for bombing is he didn't get final edit on it. He didn't get to do what he wanted to do with the movie.
No, you're right.
So.
But I also saw that his first cut was 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Well, but you can't really. A lot of movies do cut long. I mean, that's just what happens the first time. And then part of it, that's why you have good editors, and that's why you have good directors and editors working together, is to cut all that down.
Apparently, they went with Paramount's editors over his own and said, "See ya."
Right, and basically said, here, we're done with you. Get out. Here we go.
Yeah, we have your movie. We'll fix it.
Because they wanted it out really, really quick to kind of buy into the whole teen adventure thing that was happening.
And honestly,
and it didn't work.
No, and it could have been a little longer, but not the outer space stuff. I think the outer space stuff is almost too long.
Agreed.
They could have built the characters up a little bit more in the beginning, maybe.
Well, and that's what I mean by good editing would have tweaked a lot of that, because we got the joke of they're influenced by television. We got it way early and didn't need to see that entire scene length.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing if we get that that's his dad and now it's time to go. We don't need to keep talking for 40
a long
minutes.
time. Yeah. I agree.
And then we get this, give you a crystal, but what does the crystal do in the end? Because we don't really know. It glows, but then he's not even wearing it or holding it when they're all flying. So what's it do? Why are they flying? What's the point? There's a lot of the ending of this movie that's really not good. So, yeah. So there's that.
As far as awards, this movie was nominated for a few. It didn't win any. The Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films gave it a nominee for a Saturn Award for Best Makeup, which is Rob Bottin. And I love Rob Bottin. We talk about him all the time when we talk about The Thing. But these monsters or these aliens look so rubbery. It's a technique I automatically associate with Joe Dante. Is rubber effects. they're in Gremlins. They're in Twilight Zone, the movie. They're just, I don't know.
Howling. They're in Howling.
Yeah, they're in the Howling too with the bladder work, and that's Rick Baker, I think. But
no, I think that's Rob Bottin.
Is that Rob Bottin too?
Sure. Yep.
But I mean, he doesn't look as fake in The Thing as he does in these movies. But anyway, they nominated him, and they also nominated special effects. And then the motion picture sound editors also nominated it for best sound editing, but that's it. I mean, I don't have any other awards.
Well, another thing about production I have in my notes is this was originally, do you know who was originally slated to direct this?
Yes, I do. Do you want me to spoil it?
Sure.
Wolfgang Peterson.
Yes.
And he did Das Boot, right?
Yes, but the year before this, in 1984, he had done The Never Ending Story, which was very popular and very kid friendly and all of that. I did too. And so Paramount was like, perfect. This is great. This will be, he's the best director for this. But
Okay.
he insisted that it be filmed in like wherever he's from, Norway
Germany.
or Denmark or Germany or wherever.
No, it was Germany. That's what I have in my notes. He wanted to film it in
Right.
Germany. They balked at the decision, and instead he went on to do Enemy Mine, which is a better movie.
Yeah. I mean, his credits are so much better. Enemy Mine, Outbreak, Air Force One, Perfect Storm. I mean, he's got some great credits and would have been probably a better director overall. I think he would have grounded it more, whereas, like we've said, Dante tends to cartoony it up a little bit.
A little.
So. Okay, a lot. Rubbery cartoons.
That and all the stuff that Picardo was doing at the end when he was imitating all the television stuff in that rubber suit. It was like a rubber suited comedian doing imitations of old television shows.
Yep.
It was strange. Very strange.
Very strange.
Well, you know what? I do have a little trivia.
Okay.
Some of it is I put it in here because I was like, is this a key? No, not really. It's just trivia. But like when they're going through the junkyard, Rosebud, the sled from Citizen Kane is in a shot.
Yes.
The sound in the movie at the drive-in was taken from the original Atari game Yara's Revenge, which just sounds more Joe Dante to me. Inside Wolfgang's basement, the toy monkey from Close Encounters, not really a key, but a prop.
Well, it's a reference. So yeah, there's a lot of referential work in this movie, which to me are keys.
Okay. Well,
sort
I
of.
mean, I can keep going. The rat is named Heinlein. That's obviously an homage to Robert Heinlein, the Stranger in a Strange Land sci-fi author.
Sci-fi author.
Whack can be heard uttering a line from the Maltese Falcon when the crystal is given at the film's ending, the stuff that dreams are made of.
Yep. It's just
so, I mean, would
dreams
you really say the Maltese Falcon is a key to this movie? I don't think so.
Well, no, I don't think a key. It's more like these are his in jokes and his homages, but Dante does that in a lot of his movies. There's a bunch in Gremlins as well.
Right. There's a nod to The Howling, obviously, a movie that he also directed when the headline references a fire at a colony is suspected of arson. And then Dick Miller, who was in Gremlins, references to Meshach Taylor about a UFO that a headline that read Kingston Falls riot still unexplained, which is from Gremlins, obviously.
Yeah, it kind of setting up this and Gremlins as being in the same universe or the same, sort of thing. Yeah.
And then several segments from War of the Worlds are seen in this movie.
Well, you got in my movie list, I've got War of the Worlds because that's the first image you see. But War of the Worlds, This Island Earth, Earth versus the Flying Saucer, The Thing, 8 Million Miles to Earth, and The Day the Earth Stood Still are all seen at various times.
And It Came from Outer Space. It's the poster on the bedroom wall.
Yes.
So you've got that as well. So there's a lot of B-50s sci-fi movies referenced in this.
Well, not B, since Day the Earth Stood Still is probably the best science fiction movie ever made. So.
Well, I didn't mean that. Do they not consider that a B movie, though? Did it do really well?
Yeah, no, it did well.
Did it? Okay, I couldn't remember. All right. I mean, I don't equate B movies with bad movies, so I didn't mean that as derogatory. But
I understood. Okay.
Yeah. The only other key I could think of, I've already mentioned, and that's Contact, because they basically send the instructions to build the device, and it's the same plot element.
That's a great one. That's a good one. Yep. I have, we mentioned Peter Pan because of the flying scene. I have, as far as keys, definitely Star Trek Trelane or Squire of Gothos. That was obviously a huge influence on this. You could tell. And Goonies because of the adventure of the kids. But I also have the Night Out kind of feel when they first test it and go flying around the drive-in and everything else is a very Close Encounters kind of feel to it. the night when the lights started playing with everybody and zooming around, and he's chasing it in the truck and all of that. It has that kind of Close Encounters feel to it.
If you're going there, I would you'd have to mention E.T. as well with all the bike riding.
Yep, that was my next one, was E.T.
Yeah.
And then a counter one opposite that, Galaxy Quest, does a lot of this. I mean, basically takes this premise and does it right, because in
That's the
Galaxy
movie.
Quest, well, okay, I had it in my note.
No, but I'm talking about that's the movie. That's one of the movies where they
referred to the television show as
what they've seen on television. Yes, that's the movie I was thinking of.
Yeah, they refer to the television show as historical records, and they think that's actual and real, and that's why they build the spaceship to the specs of the television series. And that's a sci-fi comedy done well, as opposed to this one, not so much, sort of thing. Yeah.
You mentioned Peter Pan, and you mentioned Goonies. So how in the hell could you leave Hook out? Because that's just a mishmash of those two movies together.
Yeah, but Hook is still more grounded and more basically Hook against Peter kind of thing. And there's no real villain in this. We're not the another, I think, issue with the storytelling is there's not there's no hurdles for them to get over, because basically everything they do works. There's no challenges for them to develop character in, and there's no villain for them to fight.
No, because even Dick Miller ends up being on their side.
Yeah, which didn't make any sense at all. I mean, he's first of all, he sees where the ship is and lands there. He gets in a car while the kid's on the bike. The kid still beats him there. And then when he's there, he's tripping through the woods and can't make it. I'm going, really? And when he finally gets there, he goes like, yeah, it's like, attaboy, kid, or good job, son. Or what. I was going, what? I don't know. No. So yeah, I think it would have benefited from a rewrite and a huge re-edit, even if you had the script you had.
Agreed. And it has been, I have not seen Gremlins since it came out. And I have not seen The Howling since it came out. And I just wonder if I watch The Howling now, if I won't like it.
That would be interesting. We should put it on the list, because
it's on the list. I've just not picked it yet. But yeah.
Have we done American Werewolf?
No, we haven't. And it's much better.
It is much better. I just remember, isn't the ending of The Howling, she turns into a little kitty cat werewolf or something?
On television.
Yeah.
She's giving a news broadcast and changes into a werewolf on television, and she looks kind of like a Pekingese.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a werewolf. It looks like a little
really weird looking.
Yeah.
It's a little D. Wallace werewolf.
A little D. Wallace werewolf. It's a collectible. Get your D. Wallace werewolf.
There is one badass werewolf in that. He's like a tall guy with long hair. I remember him.
Oh yeah.
And they do a lot of bladder work on his face, and that's
big,
pretty good.
The big transformations in the doctor's lab or whatever in the cabin. Yeah.
I do think it says a lot that we're talking about other Joe Dante movies other than Explorers.
Other than Explorers.
Including Twilight
But appreciate it for a young River Phoenix, a young Ethan Hawke, and a boy's dream of wanting to go to space. Just he finds out that space isn't everything he wants, sort of.
Right. And I will say that I'm glad I watched it again to just confirm my thoughts from 30 something years ago are still pretty valid about it. It's not really changed. Sometimes movies change for me. This one really didn't.
Right.
So
when you and Farmer left the theater going, what was that?
Yeah. What the fuck, man? They're floating around in a bubble. All right. Well, we would like to thank you. I had to get a drink of water there. My throat was a little dry. For joining us today on this nostalgic dive into our past of the 80s with Joe Dante's Explorers. I forgot to mention earlier that if you are joining us for the first time, we'd like to welcome you. Usually we talk about really, really good movies. Not always, but sometimes. And if you've been, then if you're back, if you're coming back, then you know how this show goes. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes, well, the show's always great. Sometimes the movies
That's
are,
right.
and sometimes the movies are not. I'll put it that way. And if you like what you heard, we have plenty more out there. If you're listening out in podcast land, we would appreciate you giving us a thumbs up or a review wherever you listen, your podcast platform of choice. However, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can always subscribe and ring that bell. That helps us out tremendously. We have other shows as well as top fives coming to get yous as far as coming attractions. And I usually do little Shutter reviews occasionally. And if that isn't enough, because there's never enough, David, you can always go over to Patreon and sponsor us there. For as little as a cup of coffee a month, you can get bonus shows. And for maybe 2 cups of coffee a month, you could get shows that we do that are exclusive to the X-Files and Star Trek, the original series, where we dissect every single episode. And until next week, David, I think that'll do us. I guess we'll be back in. Are we back in horror next week?
I'm sure we are.
Yes, we are actually. So I will be seeing you then.
I will be seeing you then.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.